Welcome to Fantasy Football for Everyone with Alex, Art, and Dave.
What's up, everybody? This is Alex.
This is Art. This is Dave.
And this is Fantasy Football for Everyone. Tonight is the auction episode. We're going to get into a little bit of training camp news. We're going to get into some auction draft strategies. A little bit of dead season with training camp starting. Art's got his beer, so he's ready to talk auction. And I'm just going to kick it off with a little bit of training camp news. Number one is all the 49ers are hurt. So, like, every single one of them except for Brock Purdy and, surprisingly, Christian McCaffrey. So, like, John Stribling, Christian Kirk, Mike Evans. But they did sign Deebo Samuel, which I think is going to be a really big value in fantasy this year. So, what do you guys think about the Deebo Samuel signing? And go ahead, besides introducing yourselves real quick.
I'll jump in first, Art. I mean, I do think that Deebo will be a valuable piece on this offense. I think he's a guy that, if we look at his overall value, I mean, the wide receiver one overall outcomes for Deebo are well behind him, but he understands this system. He steps immediately into a role in the offense. You know, when they asked Lynch about it, he basically said, we're going to use him all over the field, out of the backfield, which I think when you look at the current state of the backfield with Garendo and James and Kalen Black all a little banged up right now, there is legitimate room for him to get touches coming out of the backfield. In addition, you know, to the routes that he's going to run as probably their wide receiver two at this point, with Pearsall being done for the year. So, you know, I think he's a guy that a lot of weeks, especially with Purdy's efficiency, you're going to be able to find a spot for him in your flex, to be honest with you. I don't know if I love him the whole way up to a wide receiver too, but I think Deebo Samuel is going to be a very usable piece in fantasy, stepping into a familiar situation where they have a plan for him. And we saw it a little bit last year, you know, with the Commanders as well. So it wasn't like he was an ineffective player last year. I mean, there were some games where he bailed the Commanders out, and I expect him to be a very significant piece of this offense this year with everything else they're dealing with.
Guys, let's face it. Deebo Samuel was never known for his first step, right? He was never known for his speed. He was known for his shiftiness. He's known for trustworthy hands. He's known for running all of the routes and knowing what the defenses are to anticipate for his quarterback, right? Deebo Samuel is like a second quarterback out there on the field, and that's what makes Brock Purdy very happy, okay? So Deebo Samuel perhaps has lost a step. In fact, it's guaranteed he's lost a step, but who gives a damn? Because that's not really what his skill set is to begin with. He's not a running back. He doesn't need to have a murderous first step. He needs to find holes in the defense, exploit them, and create space for the rest of the receivers. I bet you the one guy who's going to love him just as much as Brock Purdy is George Kittle, because George Kittle exploits spots in zones, and who helped him do that more than anyone else? Yep, that's right. Deebo's back. So I think it's a really good thing to see. And as Dave assessed it, I think you're spot on, Dave. Deebo's not going to be a wide receiver one or two. He very well may settle in as a mid-level wide receiver three, and that's pretty good value for a guy. So I'd like to see how he shoots up the board here with some other, you know, training camp news we're going to discuss here in a second. But ultimately, I think it's a really good thing for fantasy, not just for Brock Purdy.
No, that's phenomenal, guys. I completely agree with you. I mean, I think Deebo is definitely going to play a significant role in San Francisco this year, already knowing the offense. All right, because when we're talking about Kyle Shanahan, we're not talking about the offense coordinator, right? We're talking about Kyle Shanahan's offense, and Deebo has played in that for years, and they definitely signed him because they need him right now. Like, all the other receivers are hurt, so they're like, hey, bring in a guy that's healthy that can run this offense, and it can definitely be a significant part. But Dave brought up a good point with Antonio Williams, with Stephon Diggs today, recording this podcast on Wednesday. What is it, August 5th, guys? Yeah, I think I nailed it.
Yes,
Stephon
sir.
Diggs
Yep.
signed with the Commanders, so poor Antonio Williams. We really loved him on this pod, but what kind of significance do we think Antonio or Stephon Diggs brings to the Washington Commanders?
I'll let you start this one, Art.
You know, I think the significance here is the guy who's really crafty. It's well documented that Stephon Diggs is a malcontent, So like I say one thing as a positive and the other thing as a clear negative. The hope is that he helps build up a guy like Jaden Daniels, right?
Yes.
His talent is absolutely undeniable. He could very easily be a wide receiver too, okay, in fantasy. He could be a top 20 asset if his mind is right and if he helps his quarterback, right? That is a team that has a ton of skill, but we don't know if they have all the leadership necessary to win. I'm sure you're not bringing in Steph Diggs for leadership. So he damn well better prove himself on the field to be helpful to his quarterback with running crisp routes and catching the ball and getting downfield.
Great take, Art.
So I agree with pieces of that, Art, and let me just kind of put my spin sort of on what you're saying there. And I would say that, Stephon Diggs, we do know, is not necessarily the biggest locker room guy, but I think we also are of the mindset that I don't necessarily want my wide receiver to be a locker room guy, right? I want my guy out there barking and commanding the ball and getting targets. I don't think you bring a guy in a week after he says, I'm better than any wide receiver 2 in the league to make him anything less than your wide receiver 2. So, I think we know that there's going to be target volume there. I don't expect him to eclipse Terry McLaurin, but I do expect that they want to keep a smile on his face, and he's going to be a significant piece of the offense. He cracked that 1,000-yard mark last year as sort of the focal point of, the Patriots offense, but I don't know that I see 2,000-yard receivers coming out of the Commanders this year. I'm not sure that's what Jaden Daniels' skill set is built to do. I think this opens things up. I think it actually gives a little bit of a knock to Terry McLaurin's value. I do still think if either of them eclipse 1,000 yards that it's McLaurin, but I also think what we could pencil in as a solid 130 targets for Terry McLaurin now takes a little bit of a hit over the course of the season. I think this is going to be a degree of ball distribution we didn't have to count on in that offense before. I can see Diggs certainly getting to 800, 900 yards, being effective in the red zone. I don't, know that I don't know where we pencil him in drafts yet. We'll let the market dictate that to a degree. But for me, one of the biggest takeaways is I think some of Terry McLaurin's volume has to go to Stephon Diggs if you want to keep him happy in that locker room. And again, Jaden Daniels isn't built to support 2,000-yard receivers, I don't believe at this point. So that's my biggest takeaway from the signing.
I am like mind blown right now because Jaden Daniels is Dave's guy. And for him to think that he can't support 2 1,000-yard receivers is insane. But Dave, you answer all my questions I was going to ask. Is Stephon Diggs going to be a 1,000-yard receiver? Is he going to be a significant wide receiver too? Is he going to take from Terry McLaurin? And you answer all those questions that take. So, no, that was beautiful. So, Stephon Diggs is definitely a significant addition to the Commanders' offense. But yeah, that takes away a little bit from Terry McLaurin. That takes a little bit away from Chig Okonkwo. That adds a little bit to Jaden Daniels, in my opinion. I don't know about Dave's opinion so far, but yeah, we'll see how that has to go. Besides that, training camp news, Caleb Douglas from the Miami Dolphins, our first wide receiver drafted. He has shown now in training camp playing very relative to Malik Willis when they get off script, which I would assume we see a lot this year with the Dolphins. Malik Willis trying to extend plays. They do have a better offensive line, but they are not a built offensive line. I wouldn't see them having chemistry this year. And Malik Willis, with his running ability, I would see him trying to push more off script plays and extending plays as opposed to sitting in the pocket and trying to get something done. So Caleb Douglas is definitely somebody to keep an eye on, along with Malik Washington, who's playing the wide receiver 1, who's going very late in fantasy football drafts right now. And Tutu Atwell is playing the wide receiver 2 in Miami right now. So these are all guys that are not being drafted that might have significant value to your fantasy football teams this year. So looking at those guys, dropping guys in dynasty leagues that might not hold the same amount of value as these Dolphins wide receivers because they have a different quarterback this year. Malik Willis is still being drafted in the quarterback 20s, and I see an upside in him largely this year. Besides that, looking at Malik Neighbors, he is back. The Giants wide receivers, I wouldn't say they have Darius Slayton there. They have OBJ there. They have a couple receivers that aren't anybody you want to have in fantasy, but Malik Neighbors coming back is huge value, especially in dynasty. Do you guys think Malik Neighbors is a first round wide receiver in Dynasty with the injury concerns we had last year.
Dave, I know you're pretty high on Malik Neighbors, or have been for over the past couple of years. So I'd like to hear your take first.
Round one is fringe for me, to be honest with you. I think we know the clear round one wide receivers in Dynasty, right? We have JSN, Hookah, Jamar. We have Amon-Ra, has to be in that conversation. I think
Justin Jefferson,
literally the most consistent receiver in fantasy. Justin Jefferson's not there for me anymore. I mean, especially when it comes to Dynasty. I mean, we're talking first round. I mean, we're maybe 2 years, 3 years of what's the prime of his career before we find a real quarterback to throw him the ball. I mean, that when we're talking Dynasty, I think we have to remember that these guys all have a window. And, Justin Jefferson's 27 now? I mean, by the time he finds somebody that we think can get him the ball with any sort of consistency, he could be staring down 30. So I still love me some Justin Jefferson. He's not a guy I'm out on, but he's nowhere near the first round for me. I mean, you just have a guy you got to have a guy that can deliver you the football. Malik Neighbors is right there. I will say this, when you talk about some of these guys, and obviously we're researching some stuff for our Dynasty startup. Shout out to the F4E Invitational, Superflex. And, a lot of people were high on Jackson Dart. But let's be honest, that team has as much sort of variation of outcome as any team that you can be high on right now. Everybody has Jackson Dart well inside their top 10 quarterbacks. Could he be top 5? Absolutely. Could he be outside the top 15? Absolutely. So, I think Neighbors is there. Talent-wise, talent profile, Malik Neighbors is with the Jamar Chases of the world for me. But when you factor in the injury history and you look at, I still think there's a little bit of a question mark with Jackson Dart. I don't think he falls much beyond mid-second round, but Malik Neighbors, you got to get around that turn before I would be clicking his name. There's just too many other people that give you value for the foreseeable future for me to go. There's just too many uncertainties. There's a couple guys I feel more confident about. Talent profile, he's a first rounder. Whole picture, we take everything in its totality. He's just outside of it for me.
That was, that was everything we asked for. Go ahead, Art.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I like it. I mean, I'm sad about the Jettas take because I don't like seeing talent like that wasted. Like I didn't like seeing Calvin Johnson on an island, just being, just him and Matt Stafford out there. I think that made my heart hurt as a football fan, even though I'm not at all a Lions fan in particular. And seeing Justin Jefferson semi-wasting away, yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that one. Yeah, nothing more to be said. Great take, Dave.
I mean, I have a take to kind of contradict yours, Dave. So Justin Jefferson is only a year older than Malik Neighbors. That's it. Malik Neighbors entered the year late, Justin Jefferson entered the league early. And the way I'm looking at it over the next 2 to 3 years, Malik Neighbors is in a Matt Nagy offense, where Justin Jefferson is still in a Kevin O'Connell offense. So when I'm looking at those two players head to head, comparing apples to apples, I think Justin Jefferson might have a higher ceiling than Malik Neighbors just in their offensive coordinator. Kevin O'Connell is not going to go anywhere, especially if they're successful with Kyler Murray this year, and they re-sign Kyler Murray, which is a very good potential. I mean, which there's a lot of potential there for them re-signing Kyler Murray after the flop they had with Sam Darnold. I mean, there could be, Justin Jefferson could over the next 2 to 3 years have, be a better fantasy player than Malik Neighbors. And I think my argument for Justin Jefferson is he's done it before. He's been the wide receiver 1 off the board. He's been the 1.1 off the board in his career, where Malik Neighbors, coming in this year, we're very concerned because of his injury history being 3 years in. So, I mean, I think that's the thing, and that's where I've looked at Malik Neighbors and Justin Jefferson, because I'm right behind you, Dave, in our F4E Invitational, and I have to really study my picks and make sure that I'm not leaving any meat on the bone, because I know you'll snag it right up. But those are the things I've looked at. I'm like,
that's good. I know you're going to let Neighbors slide to me so you can take Jefferson.
Right, exactly. Right. Those kinds of things. But those are the things I've looked at. I'm like, if I'm looking at the 1.10 and I have Lamar, Ashton Genty, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors on the board, who am I going to take? It's all right, Justin Jefferson, like, where is he compared to Malik Neighbors? And I think, in my personal opinion, and I could very much be wrong right now because it is, a 50-50 shot. I think Justin Jefferson might have a better career over the next 2 to 3 years than Malik Neighbors.
I love it, man, and that's why we play the game, because at some point
That's why
in
we
the
play
next
the
couple
game.
years doing this thing, one of us is going to be able to look at the other one and go, "You missed that one, didn't you?"
Yeah.
So, and it could go either way, man. I think there's a great argument there. I think there's a
No,
great
I
argument
love that.
there. So,
The last train camp update I have before we get into auction strategies is Jacoby Lane in Baltimore. Dave's guy has been showing out in training camp. They took Jacoby Lane before they took Elijah Surratt. Both are rookie wide receivers. One can play the X, one can play. I mean, they're looking for outside receivers in Baltimore, especially after paying Zay Flowers 4 years, $140 million bag to continue to be their slot receiver, who was wide receiver 7 last year. So they're looking for that outside receiver, and Jacoby Lane seems to be that guy. So, guys, I know we're getting into we have our F4E Invitational this Saturday. We have a Dynasty League. We don't want to really give up too much secrets, but how are we feeling about Jacoby Lane heading into our draft on Saturday?
Let me just jump out and say this about Jacoby Lane. Any receiver that has played for the Ravens and they've been named Jacoby is a better kick returner than they are a receiver. Anyways, just saying, unless Mike Tomlin gets in their way.
As a
or
Steelers
maybe
fan,
especially if Mike Tomlin gets in their way.
as a Yinza.
yeah.
That's my only take. That's all I got.
That's all you got? What you got, Dave?
No, listen,
That's all I got.
I'm just going to say 6'4", 205 is, that's an NFL outside prototype receiver. That is not what Zay Flowers does. Those targets are there to be had. Mark Andrews is getting a little bit older. They likely leave. There's going to be opportunities there. The college production maybe wasn't through the roof. I don't think he was never a 1,000-yard guy in college. But again, prototype wide receiver, filling a spot that they really don't have on that roster of any noteworthiness. There will be targets to go around outside of, Zay Flowers. We know Andrews is going to be a monster in the red zone, but that still leaves a lot of downfield work and open things. And listen, Zay Flowers never has had 5 touchdowns in a season either, right?
Wow.
So you look at that 6'4" guy when you get close. It's Andrews or it's a Jacoby Lane. Like that archetype is ripe in that offense right now. And honestly, man, with Declan Doyle coming over, we saw a little bit of that with Rome Odunze at the beginning of the season last year. I think he's going to want to use him in very similar ways to how he was using Rome early on before the injury. He's a rookie, so it's still to him to crack the starting lineup and to make sure he gets the snaps. But the physical tools are there. The opportunity within that offense is there. Red zone targets are there. I've been high on Lane for the entire offseason for that exact reason. And he will open up things for Zay underneath if they use him the right way. So.
Right, exactly. Got anything, Art?
Yeah, I guess Dave
processing.
is not taking the Rashad Bate, man.
No,
Anyways,
there's no Rashad Bateman take.
It was my opportunity to be a little funny there, be a little corny, as you know. I have to infuse into multiple episodes. As Alex
I
gave me
hate him
the
so
SMH
much.
emoji. We all do.
Hey,
No,
it's when you need Batman, but you get Bateman, right?
Yes,
Huh?
yeah,
There we go.
literally,
Just for you, Art. Just for you.
That's Rashad Bateman. So no, guys, I honestly, for me, I love Zay Flowers this year. Him showing up as a wide receiver 7 last year, and him being drafted as a wide receiver 20 to 30 range is that's incredible value, right? They brought in 2 rookie receivers, but they didn't bring in anybody significant. It's not like they went out and paid the bag for Alec Pierce or somebody, have a downfield threat. Guys, Zay Flowers is such a value this year in fantasy, and you are drafting him as your wide receiver 3, and he could end up being your wide receiver 1, because if they and they're not going to be the same offense they were last year, right? Todd Monken went to the Browns, so it's not going to be the same, but the team, I feel like the Ravens are trying to build are very similar to what the Seahawks built over the past couple years, right? Building on that defense, making sure you're locking in that defense, what John Harbaugh had before the past few years, and then letting that offense thrive, and especially with the quarterback like Lamar Jackson, who's just turning 30. he is looking to get over that AFC Championship, that Super Bowl hump.
I know this now.
Yep.
It's official. Give Alex his flowers. Give him his flowers.
Absolutely.
There it is.
It's give
All
him
right,
his
guys.
flowers.
All right, so that's training camp news. That's what we got. Let's get into auction strategies a little bit. So for me personally, I'm going to go first because I have not been good. So I've been part of the auction league for the past 2 years. And I have not been great in it. Let alone to play my own defense. It is a 16-team auction league where we have roster limits, 2 quarterback limit, everything like that. But like something I've done before I get into Art and then we get into Dave. Dave's the expert in auction. Something I've done over the past couple years that I feel like I've put myself in a hole is just distributing value per position, right? I'm like, hey, I want to spend, like, if I have $200 all day, I want to spend $12, $15, $20 on quarterback. I want to spend $40, $50, $60 on running backs. Like, and then I get into that, and that puts me in a hole because I'm like, yeah, Dave's like shaking his head. He has his face in his hands. Because then what I end up doing is I'll draft the stub running back, but then I only have $10, $12 at the end of the day to draft my running back 2, running back 3. Dave has a better strategy of how to handle that kind of situation. But what I'm doing with my auction drafts this year is really spreading it out, making sure I find value in every position at the top of the draft, and also not being afraid to click the player's name when you see a value. Last year, a big lesson I learned is we had Jonathan Taylor. He was at $38, and I did not click his name because I was like, hey, I might find better value later. Looking for too much value in auction drafts is going to set you back. You're going to end up with shitty players. And that's how auction works, right? You got to click. You got to be ready. Click the button when you see players at a very good value, especially the players going top 5 in ADP, top 5, top 10. Be ready to spend money on those guys because you'll be able to make up value elsewhere in the draft. And then you'll also have those stub players, especially for a guy like me that's in a 16-team auction. But Art, I'll let you take over with some of your strategy because you definitely have much more experience in the auction drafts.
So Dave can expound upon this as much as I can, if not more. But like Alex, your method in how you did that, and I think you learned a lot from it last year, is something I'll correlate to anybody buying a home or furnishing an apartment, right? It's like you need all new appliances. And you set your mind on a certain budget across the board, and then you go to Lowe's and you're like, damn, there's a Viking oven range on sale for 11 grand. It was originally 18. Who cares what my budget is? Let's go with the 11 grand range.
Right.
And then you get a really nice microwave, you get a really nice dishwasher, and by the time you're done, you have $13 for a refrigerator, and it's too late. It's absolutely too late at that point. So you absolutely cannot budget by position. You cannot do that. That is off the board. Like, take that from your mind, and like Men in Black, it's like gone out of your brain. You simply can't do that. It's got to be positional values based on who's left, right? Okay. Like, you have to think of this in a very dynamic fashion. Like, how many, if you went to prom, how many girls can you dance with, right? You can't dance with them all.
No,
you won't have enough time. There's not
can.
enough songs to dance. Pick the ones you're friends with. Pick the ones you want to date. Like, pick the ones that mean something in your world. And for these drafts, for auction drafts, it has to come to something that matters to you. And I have a feeling Dave and I will go back and forth on a few things because Dave and I, in the auctions, the league that Dave created, we did a lot of setup together when this league started, and I'm happy to be a part of that, but it's Dave's league, not my league. So we bounced a lot of ideas off each other. And what we found that is over the years, we've had a ton of fun. So let me say, the first thing with auctions, they are far and beyond the most superior version of a draft ever in my life as far as fantasy is concerned. Here's why I'm going to say this for people who are afraid out there, right? Like, clutch your pearls real quick, snake drafters, because this is going to sound unconventional. But when it comes down to it, a snake draft is rather predictable, right? You generally know who's going to go in what portion of the draft. In an auction draft, the first player nominated could be, I don't know, Braden Loop, the kicker for the Ravens who sucks. You can nominate whoever in what order you are up to nominate. So it doesn't have to go in a conventional format. You don't have to make things a rigid structure. That's obnoxious. We've done it hundreds of times. We're over that. And that's why this league format is so unique. Because if you really want certain players and you have your heart set on certain players, guess what? You can actually get them if you play your cards right. You're not going to get that player because the snake order of the draft pretty much predetermines you can't get that guy.
Mm-hmm.
You control your own destiny in an auction league. Hence why auction leagues have become more popular, right? There's a reason why less people drive stick shift cars. It's because people got lazy. Everybody's like, it's more convenient to drive an automatic. People are already turning away from stupid snake draft leagues because of auction leagues, okay?
Right.
Not only is it less conventional and more fun, your league mates, you get to know them better. There's a lot of trash talking. People get mad because you stole their pick because they were in on that pick, not because the snake draft determined where they could get the person at or the player at. So there's a lot of background stuff in that regard. But here are a few tricks and tips that people have used over the years. These aren't necessarily things that I've used. And, maybe I'm saying that because Dave and I are in the same league and I have nothing to hide from Dave. But, our league mates are keen to our notes, our thoughts, our ideas, right? Most of them generally know what I'm about to say. However, maybe they've never encapsulated it as such. So here goes nothing, right? People put in what are called false bids. Okay. If you're trying to do one of three things, one of these things in a false bid scenario is you pick a player that you think the masses are interested in and you help start a run on that player. Like, for example, when Corey Dillon was hot, okay, I was not a Corey Dillon believer, okay, because I didn't think the Bengals could support him with their offensive line, okay? I didn't think it was going to happen. And so it was easy at that point to try to bid people up on Corey Dillon because people thought Corey Dillon is a big deal. He's a receiving back. He can do all these things. Well, I didn't lose in too many leagues, so I guess my strategy worked out fine. With that being said, okay, you don't want to put in too many false bids because then everyone thinks every player you nominate is not actually a player you want. So you have to pick your spots when you're picking your league mates' pockets. Dig? First part of that, okay? Second part of that is timing, okay? If you're out there trying to maybe start up a run of sorts on a particular position, you better choose to do it early in the draft. If you think one of your league mates loves Lamar Jackson, nominate Lamar early. Put Lamar on the block and get that person to pay. Because we only have a finite budget in mind that we can work with. If somehow you can convince one of your league mates that Lamar Jackson's worth $72, better on you for convincing him of that. Now, that's an unlikely scenario that Lamar would go so high. But really, when it comes down to it, that way can really benefit you and it could really burn you. The other side of that coin, and this is the third portion, is if you put in false bids, you could get caught with your pants down, okay? You bid somebody up, you create a run, and you get Lamar Jackson up to, say, $54, and the other person backs out. Well, there goes out of your $200 budget, like we have in Dave's league, a fourth of it is on Lamar in this scenario. So you've got to be careful not to do that too often, but it is a nice advantage that you can utilize in your league. So that's the first part. The second part is timing matters. Timing absolutely matters. If you're in there looking to fill position by position by position, it's going to be really challenging for you because everybody else's timing is different. Like Alex said, he was looking to fill out, say $60 for running backs and $40 for his two quarterbacks and whatever, right? Whatever the lineup was for him when he made those decisions. Not everybody has the same strategy. So when other people are trying to pick their players, you're already still thinking about your strategy. You have to be adept to what those are doing around you in the auction, okay? If you value Justin Herbert as quarterback number 7 or 8, and you let him go off the board, and then you're forced to scramble later, and you get stuck with, say, Trevor Lawrence, now, there's nothing wrong with Trevor Lawrence. But if you're really hell-bent on having a guy that could be a top 3 quarterback, I don't know that T-Law is your guy. So don't paint yourself into a corner because you get like tied into the timing too much, or you get tied maybe to one player, and then when you don't get them, you get upset about it. Everyone has their favorite players. It's the timing in which you nominate those players or the timing in which you capitalize. Now, with all that being said, typically what happens in auction leagues, and this isn't a strategy, my strategies are done, and I'll add in a few more, maybe as Dave mentions a few things too, because we are like-minded in that regard. But in my estimation, for every year we've done Dave's league in the auction, by about week 6, you find out who's got the juice. By week
Right.
6, teams are built for the long haul, and you can see who else is going to fall back. And at that point, the best part, and Dave is the shark of this. He just smells blood from miles away. The shark of all sharks. That's when it's time to strike. That's when it's time to trade. Because when people are looking like 2-4 after week 6, it's already over in those auction leagues because you have already less talent if you're not aggressive in the waiver wire, right? So if you're 2-4 and you don't build through your waiver, your team is dead. You better trade. You better find a way out of it. But by week 6, in my estimation, that's when the real cream rises to the top. And that's when the rich can get richer. And Dave has often been the rich of the rich. So, Dave, the floor is yours, sir.
I appreciate you setting the table there, Art, and I'm definitely going to expand on a few of those things. I kind of want to bring a couple things of my own here to the table, but I'm gonna be the first to say this. This is the hardest pod I'm gonna have to do because, we know for certain that our auction league mates listen to this, and this is letting them see how the sausage is made, man, but in a good way. So, I just accept that, so we're 6 years into it. The league that Art and I are in, we're 6 years. I'm 6 for 6 in the playoffs. I've got 2 championships. I've played to get into it 4 of 6 years. So, I love it. I love this format. I always have. And, there's several reasons for that. And Art started to touch on them, but for me, the auction draft lets you maximize value like no other format that you can, and Art alluded to it. In a snake draft, we all mock, right? We know who we're seeing at 9-10. If we're on the turn, we know who's there. We're smack dab in the middle. We kind of have 2 to 3 players we're targeting each round that we expect to realistically see. The auction draft is a choose your own adventure, man. And that's really the fun of it for me. Now, kind of to touch on Art's points of pitfalls and things we want to be careful of. I think when you start to talk auction drafts with people, and Art alluded to it, people go in with this mindset of like, dude, I love this. I can definitely leave the draft with Jahmyr Gibbs. I got to tell you, man, for my money, and as we get through a couple points here that I think are really essential for auction success, the first one is just don't get married to a player, okay? We started to touch on tier-based rankings last time. And if we're thinking through what a roster construction looks like, we're probably through tier 3 at most positions, running back, wide receiver, especially as we're talking skill position talent, before we get through the top 12 players in the draft, right? So anybody in players tiers really 1 through 3, you're looking at a player that's either your potential wide receiver 1 or your RB1. And we need to remember that. We don't got to have the top guy off the board. We need to maximize value within those tiers. That's really what it comes down to. And so, I go into it with this strategy. I'm sure we've all heard the scrubs and studs and scrubs strategy. There's people that like a little more balanced team. What works for you, number one, it's your team. Play the game you want to play. This is about fun at the end of the day. We're going to try to give you tips to set you up for success. But if you're not having a good time and you don't love looking at your team, you're absolutely playing the game the wrong way. So I will say, for my money, studs and scrubs is what you need to lean into. You need a few linchpin players to build your roster around, and then you fill in with the value-based talent around it. So when I go into a draft, and this is the point where anybody in drinking and drafting can just kind of turn off if they want to. You've already downloaded the pod. We've got your viewership, your listenership. You can tag out here. It all gets worse from here. But
yeah, good.
So
we got your clip.
I'm budgeting 50 to 52%, 55% on the high end of my overall budget for my studs. I'm going to
Yes.
operate that most of these sites are giving you a $200 budget to build your team. I think that's fairly standard. You might be in a league that plays a little differently, but if you don't have a $200 budget, you're probably deep enough into this auction thing that you don't need to listen to us. So for the sake of what we're going to talk about, we're looking at a $200 budget. So I'm at 50 to 55% of my overall budget is going to go towards my top 2 players. I don't care if that's a more expensive running back or wide receiver. Again, at this point,
y'all.
I'm looking to maximize value within tiers. So first thing I would say is over budget for your studs. If you're looking to spend 50 to 55% of your budget on your top 2 studs, you're looking at, $100 to $110 of your budget should be going towards your top 2 players. There is always value to be found. I'll give the example of our draft last year. That's how I go into the draft. And like Art said, there's a nomination aspect to the game, right? You're on the clock. You get to pick who bids next. You throw a little curveball in, right? So the first guy that goes off in our draft last year is Malik Neighbors, right? Stud wide receiver. He starts getting bid up. And all of a sudden the bidding slows down, and so this is going to bring me to my next point that I kind of want to roll in here, which is the draft is long, but the season is longer, right? So I think we get in our head, like, I can't buy the first player up in the draft. I'm going to have to sit here for the next 4 hours. My budget's already shot. I'm going to watch all these other guys competing. It don't matter. If that's where if the value is in the first pick because everybody's feeling gun shy, you jump on it. So the bidding at Malik Neighbors stops at $41. Well, again, we reference our tier rankings. For me last year, Malik Neighbors was the number 1 wide receiver in tier 2, which puts him at wide receiver 4 overall for me. So, and these sites, you're expecting these stud players to go $60 to $63 for some of them. Maybe if your draft is a little less aggressive, you're in that 50 to 55 range, but you should expect to pay 60 plus for studs. And, I maybe could have bundled this in there better, but I'll throw this in real quick. Mock on your site, please. Okay, every site values these players slightly differently. So make sure you're mocking on the site that you're drafting on so that you know the accurate value of these players when you get into the draft room, and you don't jump in and, oh shit, everybody here is $10 more than what I'm used to spending. Your whole strategy's out the window. So, I grabbed Malik Neighbors at 41. Now, this is kind of where you start to go next level with it, right? If we're budgeting 50 to 55% of our overall thing for our 2 stud players, then we need to go in our head, all right, that's $100 to $110. That means I'm $50 to $55. If I just grab Malik Neighbors at $41, I got a $14 surplus on the next player that I can grab, right? So now instead of a $50 player, I can go up to a $64 player, which means if I want Jahmyr Gibbs and he's what I've decided I'm getting in this draft, no matter what, I can hammer the daylights out of Jahmyr Gibbs to get him at 64. For my money, you still kind of continue to look for that value, right? So then a guy like, to your point, Jonathan Taylor comes available, right? For $38. Maybe it's $44, somewhere in that nature. But so you grab Malik Neighbors for 41, you grab Jonathan Taylor for 38. You're now sitting on $79 worth of players, and you had $110 budgeted for these players. Suddenly, this entire draft is your oyster, right? Now you have the 2 linchpins of your team, and you can get in there and start to wreak havoc. So that's what we're looking at. And so, to go beyond those top 2 studs, I think it's important to know that, like, for me personally, I'm spending 90 to 95% of my budget on my starting lineup. I have absolutely no problem at all filling out my bench with dollar guys. There is always going to be value in those guys. I'm telling you, when you get into the season, there's going to come a point where maybe this one's a little bit tough of an example. You're not getting this guy for $1, but as you're spending that extra 80, $70, $80 to kind of round out that roster beyond your studs, you're going to find a guy like Josh Downs goes in your draft for $6.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, a guy that's going to be an absolute target monster and an offense that's going to be throwing the ball is sitting on your roster for $6. And that's a guy that you're going to be able to put in your flex on a regular basis. So this is what we're doing, and it's going to be up to you, right? You know how many starting positions you have. In our auction draft, we start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 flex. So 6 skill position players that I'm budgeting for. And you can determine what the value of those other guys are once you get past that first. I lean into that third guy being a $30 to $35 bid. And then, I'm filling in with 10s and 15s here and there. Another point I think as we go through this that's really important as we look at our overall roster construction, and this is just me personally, but I think in auction more than any other format, you cannot overvalue the quarterback position. There are guys like Lamar Jackson that are going to wind up going for $35, $40. Josh Allen's going to be $35, $40. For the way I personally want to build my roster, when I can grab a Brock Purdy for $7 later in the draft,
Exactly.
or I can get, that money in an auction draft needs to be committed to your skill position players. I usually, depending on how I kind of build out my metrics, sometimes I'll let myself push up to 15 on a quarterback, but usually $10 is where I cut it off for a quarterback. And it does, you will find a guy that you can get for that money. You're going to be amazed at what Justin Herbert goes for. You're going to be amazed at what Patrick Mahomes goes for. There are going to be these guys that by putting them on the roster when you're stacking studs, kind of against that surplus you have against the deficit you want to spend on your studs, you're going to be able to put talent around a very viable quarterback. For me, I've never been able to build the roster that I want to look at when I overspend at the quarterback position. So, I could ramble on about this forever, but I think the main takeaway is this. Like I started with, there is no other format that you can play fantasy football in that allows you to determine the value of your players like an auction draft. And there is nobody that lets you go. Maybe every once in a while in a snake draft, the guy falls to you and you're like, I can't believe he's here. You push on him. But for the most part, your league mates are always going to dictate that. In this, you can really look through your tiers and go, any one of these four guys goes at $40 to $45. I'm jumping on him. And I know that I can start stacking talent around it.
And to help educate everybody and support more of what Dave is saying, here's one other part of this, and Dave may touch on this. So if I'm stealing your thunder, Dave, I'm sorry.
No, man, you're good.
People need to do, aside from just having your tiers, which I've preached many times, right? And your auction values, you should have a range of values for your top, say, 60 players, right? The guys that matter the most are the guys that will impact the league the most. So if Dave in this scenario says he wants Christian McCaffrey, for him, Christian McCaffrey, he will definitely pay $42, but he will not pay more than $55. Dave has to know there has to be a point where he cuts himself off. There's a governor here on that engine. Cut it off.
Yes.
If it goes to 54 and Dave isn't actively trying to get him at 55, he needs to stop himself from what the next move is, because that's when the car goes off the road and it's toast. So having a range of values is important. And what Dave said going into his first point is immaculate. If you get a value, then you have a surplus. That's fantastic. If you're doing this right, you will have that money to play with. You absolutely will. And so having a range of values is very important. And you may underpay for every one of the top 5 guys you bid on, and you'll be sitting there fat and happy towards the end of the draft. But you can't take that money with you. And in last year's draft, I had money to take with me, and it didn't help me a ton. Now, granted, I did fine in the league last year, but still, I'm not trying to do fine. I'm trying to dominate.
No, we're trying to win.
And if you're trying to dominate, you got to play the rule.
Trying to win.
Yeah,
that's right. You play to win the game.
That's right.
Yeah, we're not here playing to have a good time. We're here to win, and that's why we're putting this information out there for everybody, for fantasy football, for everyone. Everybody is here listening to what Dave has to say and what Art has to say about, and they've been extremely successful in auction leagues. So make sure you're taking these points home. Don't overpay for players. Don't sit there and underpay for players. Make sure you're getting the guys that you want. Make sure you're running your tiers the way they're supposed to be run. If you have a player in a tier that you know is a value, click that button, because you don't want to be like me and sitting there at the end of the year. Dude, if I took Jonathan Taylor for $39, $40, I would have won 2-3 more games and I would have made the playoffs. That is not the spot you want to be in. So these guys know what they're talking about. These guys are here giving you the information, their secret sauce to how they win their auction league. So, no, I think that's phenomenal, guys. That's a great point. But Do you all have anything else for the people before we sign off and let them get into drafting mode?
No, that honestly, man, that's it for me. And I appreciate you guys reinforcing those points. Art's you guys wrap that up very succinctly, man. Like, you don't get caught in that bidding war and go beyond where you're comfortable. Don't be afraid to pull the trigger when you see value. It doesn't matter if that guy was the plan going in. Maybe Jonathan Taylor was never on your radar, but at
No.
$38, Jonathan Taylor should not leave your radar. You got to smash those things. And listen, man, go out. I'm just going to encourage everybody listening, go out and join an auction league. Even if you jump
Yep.
into a free league on a site like Sleeper, ESPN, whatever, just go out and try it. You're going to fall in love with it. The reason this league exists that Art and I are in is because I wanted to play in an auction league for years and could never get in one. I didn't know anybody that started one up, nobody running one. So I finally said, I'm just going to start one. I don't have a work league. There's some diehard fantasy football people, at our office. They're listening now, hopefully. And I was like, let's just start it, man. Let's see what happens. And, I think everybody is into it at this point, man. I think they look forward to the draft. Like I say, block off a little more time. This isn't going to be a quick snake draft where people kind of know what they're doing and you flow. There's strategy in this. You're down to 1 second and you're about to see that dude in your lineup, and then boom, it's back up to 10 seconds and somebody's a buck ahead of you. And then it's a game within a game. It is very, very foreign from the snake draft experience, but it is a blast, man. And again, it lets you play the game and control your destiny like no other format that's out there. And it is, man. It is. I just want to say it again, a game within the game. You're thinking about every pick. You know what the guys on your team are doing. You know what they need. You know when you can push them. You know when you can fall back. If you love fantasy football, it takes it to a whole nother level, man. It's gamesmanship. It's 3D chess, right? When everybody else is just rook for a pawn, like it's 3D chess. So get out, try it, man. Play fantasy football as many ways as you can, but get into an auction league. Some sites are going to call them salary cap leagues, but get out there and try one because it's a blast, man. You're going to fall in love with it. I promise.
Let me say this. Let me say something real clear, right? Dave made a great point, and I find this a good time to infuse this, right? Once upon a time, Dave was never in an auction league, right? And once upon a time, I never had a podcast. And then I just talked to my good buddy Alex, and we found a way to make it happen. So dreams evolve in different ways, right? You manifest them, they will come true. Go have fun, people. Get out of these stupid snake drafts. I'm tired of this stuff.
That's it. I'm over it.
I mean, who are you, Lord Voldemort? We could say his name.
Were you Slytherin?
Snake.
And hopefully, Alex, you got some stuff to take with you.
No, I mean, listen, Dave, like I said, I'm going to reach out for you for your tool. Art's a little jealous, but I'm going to make sure I get that tool so I can use for my auction draft. But guys, you guys crushed tonight. Way to give the people what they need so they can fucking go out there and nail their auction drafts. But make sure you follow Fantasy Football, the number 4, everyone on Instagram and YouTube. Make sure you follow at Real Draft Nation and check out their app, check out their website. Art, Dave, and I all have content on there. We're all publish Arthur's right now. Tier emoji, we're doing great things with them. And also make sure you go sign up for the Smart Money tool and the Fantasy Football tool. 10% off your first purchase when you put in promo code F4E. So we got all kinds of partnerships going, and we are locked and loaded for every single format you're playing in fantasy football this season. Art's got something to say.
Yes, Alex, don't forget our guys are ripping and flipping, _flipping 26 on Instagram. Get in on their auctions. Look, I'm telling you, like flat out. If you're a card collector, a sports card collector specifically, and you've been in the game, you already know ripping and flipping, okay? If you are just getting into it, you need to know ripping and flipping. Again, ripping _flipping 26 on Instagram. You'll find some unbelievable cards at really competitive prices, right? You can go on eBay and you can make some comparisons. You can download plenty of apps to grade your cards. Ripping and flipping will not steer you wrong. I'm telling you guys.
Love it, Art. And yeah, Alex, let's get that plug in for RotoWire one more time, man. F4E is the tool. If you want to pull some really serious tier rankings off for your auction draft, I believe they even have the ability to link it directly to your league. So you're going to be able to go through the RotoWire tool, do a very custom mock draft to your auction league based on the values that those players have on the site that you're using, all conveniently located in one place, man. RotoWire makes it as simple as it possibly can be for you to take the next step in this thing. So code F4E, take that next step in the auction draft, guys.
That's right.
Guys, we got partnerships on partnerships right now. Make sure you follow us. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like us. Make sure you listen to us. And for Dave, for Art, for yours truly, F4E.